Coming up, militia groups say they'd like to help local law enforcement, but Idaho's sheriffs say no thanks. A dialogue about the militia next.
Funding for Dialogue is provided by the Friends of Idaho Public Television and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Welcome to Dialogue. I'm Marcia Franklin. Hardly a day has gone by recently without some mention of militia groups around the country. Since the bombing 3 weeks ago in Oklahoma, publications from Time magazine to the Wall Street Journal have featured articles on groups that may have inspired suspect Timothy McVeigh. But one of Idaho's militia groups was in the news even before the bombing. In March, Samuel Sherwood, the leader of the United States Militia Association in Blackfoot, was quoted as telling his members that they should, quote, go up and look legislators in the face because someday you may be forced to blow it off. Several weeks later, when the Idaho legislature passed a resolution condemning Sherwood's comment, he said he had been misquoted. And since the bombing, Sherwood has distanced himself from the violent rhetoric of other militia groups. But he has remained adamant in his belief that militias are needed, particularly to help local law enforcement. Tonight, Mr. Sherwood joins us to talk more about the militia movement, as does Ada County Sheriff Vaughn Killeen, a law enforcement officer who says he does not need or welcome the services of a militia. Now, both gentlemen will also take your calls on our toll-free line, 1-800-973-9800. First to you, Mr. Sherwood, you've been on any number of media outlets. You told me you've been interviewed by a French newspaper today, CNN, Day One, everything. How many new members have you picked up as a result of this type of media exposure, or has it hurt you?
We've lost about 3 members nationwide. We have picked up 2 state directors and got state organizations going in both Colorado and Massachusetts, and about a net gain of 50 members nationwide.
Bringing the total to what?
Still we're hovering right around 5,000.
Okay. Now you have said to your members in the past that you want state recognition, that without state recognition you don't feel that you can be legal. Do you think that this attention, I know some legislators and other lawmakers have distanced themselves from your group who had previously spoken to your group. Do you feel all this attention will hurt your effort for state recognition?
Well, we're not so much looking for state recognition for the United States Militia Association. We're a nationwide association to bring the attention of the legislators to the fact that under Title 32 of U.S. Code, states are entitled to, quote, other defense forces, which they may use at their discretion in any role they want to. And 17 of the states have those, and the rest of them do not. What we want to do is, within the states that do not have those kinds of organizations, to bring it to the legislature, create those other state defense forces, and then try to motivate the use of them in something constructive within the local environment at the city and county level.
Mr. Sherwood, why do we need state defense forces? We have the Idaho National Guard, and we have police officers, and we have local sheriffs.
Well, I think that unless the local sheriffs and police officers and National Guard are willing to swear off a budget increase for the next 4 years, that they'll tell you that they have needs that are not being met, and they have programs they would like to see furthered. For instance, the DARE program. The DARE program started out at the federal level, federal funding, and is now going through a 3-year, 4-year transition period where the state will have to completely fund that. That's one of the programs we'd like to be able to step forward into and be able to provide for the law enforcement, for the school system, free without any charge.
Sheriff Killeen, the Sheriff's Association took a vote on this issue and decided that it was not interested in having any type of support from militia groups. Could you explain why?
Well, I think the concept, at least our feelings were fairly simple, in that the militia supports a particular ideology. It comes with a certain cause. In fact, it has a primary cause, it appears to us, based upon the literature that we could see from the militia. And when we ask people to be reserves, police officer reserves, sheriff's reserves, whatever the case may be, or volunteers. I have citizen volunteers, retired citizens, non-retired citizens, whatever the case. We don't say Republicans, come forward and help us. We don't say Democrats, come forward and help us, or one selective group. The militia, it comes together for one particular major reason, and we don't feel comfortable with the groups like that coming in, especially when they've suggested that the federal government, in essence, is an enemy. And to belong to an organization such as ours to help us educate or train kids with that subtle message that might be sold tends to concern us.
In the literature, in the book that Mr. Sherwood has written, he does, he's very laudatory and very complimentary about sheriffs, and recognizes them as a matter of fact as the only legal law enforcement tool locally. Does that not impress you in any way, or?
Well, you know, certainly we've all heard the comments over and over again that, you know, obviously America, this is a free country. We can do what we want. We can meet. We can associate with who we wish to associate with, and we can espouse certain ideas. And the militia certainly has every right to do that sort of thing. And I understand that some of the philosophies of the militia and how they feel about sheriffs, but nonetheless, as a sheriff, I'm sworn to uphold the Constitution of this country as well as constitutional laws of the state of Idaho. And those constitution, or those laws, often are interpretations by courts over the period of years. We get to where we're at today. The Constitution is not a clean, simple document in a lot of ways. That's why we have all this litigation. That's why we have judges interpreting these kinds of things. I don't always agree with what the judges or what the Supreme Court comes down with, whether the state Supreme Court, appellate courts, or the U.S. Supreme Court. Sometimes I'm disturbed, but nonetheless, we are a nation of laws.
Okay, well, let's go to our phone calls here. Gary in Twin Falls. Hello? Gary? Hello? Gary? Well, we'll try another one here. Okay. Hold on a second. Bud in Meridian? Hello? Well, we're obviously having some problems here with the phones. We'll get that straightened out. Mr. Sherwood, you've repeatedly said that you want to obey laws and respect politicians. However, you're quoted you say in your book that your banner is, quote, the original Constitution now and forever. Does that mean that you only respect the laws that emanate from the Constitution and the first 10 amendments and not the other amendments to the Constitution?
Well, I think that there are various problems with some of the amendments that if we had not had them, we wouldn't have the problems we have today. The original Constitution, for instance, originally provided that the federal government could not levy direct taxation upon the citizens. The 16th Amendment changed that. That then has caused a great deal of frustration in the enforcement area with the IRS and other things. We right now have a problem with the 17th Amendment, where instead of senators being represented and chosen by the legislature and representing the states, we now have a call from the Governor Leavitt out of Utah for a conference of states to try and get some sort of representation at the federal government level with respect to states' rights. That's what the senators were for.
And that conference of the states has been halted because of protests by groups like your own, and they're saying, hey, this is part of the National Governors Association, we didn't want to rewrite the Constitution. Leavitt is very puzzled by your reaction to this conference.
Leavitt didn't listen. He hasn't read his Constitution.
But let me ask you, though, I still need an answer to the question. Do you then only respect the original Constitution and the first 10 amendments? I understand you have problems with the other amendments.
Do we respect it?
Do you follow the laws that emanate from those amendments?
Certainly we do. We believe in being obedient to the law, whether you agree with it or not, whether you think it's unconstitutional or not. We believe in being obedient to that law.
Sure. Do you have any comments?
Well, there again, my concern is, and I suppose I can ask Samuel this, and do you believe or do you support the Constitution of the United States of America, its agents, and the court's interpretation of the Constitution as it stands today?
Oh, I think I've said that. I think I've repeated. I said that to you in your office. I've said that on numerous occasions, that we support all of the legal and lawful edicts, rulings, decisions, etc., regarding the Constitution, all of the laws framed, whether we agree with them to be constitutional or not, and we will abide by them as an association until we have the body politic necessary that we can change them.
Through a political process.
Through the political process.
Then why is the militia organizing as a body of armed individuals with a military presence?
First of all, we're not armed. The individuals may or may not be armed. That's part of the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. But the association is not armed, and we do not do drills. We don't go up into the hills in camouflage uniforms. We don't aren't out shooting weapons, etc. We are a completely disarmed, associative, body politic entity.
Do you want to be armed?
We have the right to be.
Well, according to your literature, and that's why I want to get this clear, according to your literature, you advocate arming yourselves with artillery, with tanks.
Oh, no. Vaughn, back up here. What we advocate is state defense forces under federal law and under state law
National
to
Guard?
be armed with that. The state defense forces, as provided for under Title 32, Section 109, Paragraph C, provides that these things be made available. And
Sam?
of the 17 states, they are armed with those things.
We have a National Guard.
Well, that's fine. That's a good argument. 17 states disagree and say that we want state defense forces.
Are the 17 states that exist, you're talking about militia again?
No, I'm talking about state defense forces.
Okay, I'm getting confused going back and forth between the militia and state defense forces. So are the state defense forces under the same kind of system that we had a couple of hundred years ago when we had the militia?
In 1956, the word militia was edited out of federal law, and state defense forces was placed into that word.
So we're dealing with semantics here, but it goes back to my original question. And the same thing I told you when we were in my office that day having a discussion. And I don't see, nor do I understand the void that I see you folks wanting to fill in this country. And if now you're saying you have no problem with the laws and constitution of this country, you don't advocate arming yourselves.
Oh, no. Wait a minute. I didn't say I didn't have any problem with them.
You know,
I said I wouldn't be disobedient to them.
In the sense of being
I have a lot of problem with them.
And I have problems with some of them too. And I can't disagree with you on that. But the bottom line is what I'm trying to get here is the militia as it stands today, at least the United States militia in Idaho, does not advocate violence against the government.
That's correct.
Okay, does not advocate arming itself in a military fashion.
That is correct.
Then have you changed your philosophy in the last couple of weeks?
No, sir. Have not.
Samuel, I just read, I've got your book right here, United States Militia, and that doesn't say what you're saying now.
Yes, it does. Have you
in fact tempered your comments in the wake of the Oklahoma bombing? Because when you do read your book, although you talk about respecting politicians and such, I'm quoting now here, you're talking about in your book federal officials that you feel have gone astray, and you say these corrupt and decadent men and women must remain identified as the example of evil leadership. They are vermin, rats who carry the Black Death. These carriers of death must themselves taste of death by the hand of the just executioner of the just laws under our constitutional system. However, the words that you choose to use seem to be, conjure up images of war or scary images, Black Death. Why?
Black Plague. What was the effect of the Black Plague upon Europe? It killed nearly 50% of the entire population.
But why associate federal employees or federal?
No. What we're associating is federal employees and law enforcement officers who are disobedient to the laws of the United States, who are plundering the people. Those people right now are above and beyond the law. We need to bring them back under the law.
I understand how you feel.
Murder, for instance, is punishable by death. If you were to shoot someone, or I was to shoot someone, the penalty for that would be death. Right now, law enforcement officers at the federal level who shoot women and children at Ruby Ridge or at Waco or at other places around the country, they're given promotions. We think they should be held according to federal law and state law and prosecuted thereunder.
But does it help?
Does
it help to say these carriers of death must themselves taste of death? Is that not?
Can we not say that the carrier of the death of the deaths in the bombing of Oklahoma City must themselves, to stand accountable under the just laws of this nation, must themselves taste of death? Yes, and it applies to them just as equally as it does to a federal officer.
So are you advocating that they must taste of death? I'm confused.
What I'm saying is that if by your hand you kill innocent citizens in violation of the law, regardless of whether you're a federal employee, state employee, local employee, or an employee of the local Burger King, makes no difference whatsoever, there must be justice.
Okay.
If you kill, then the penalty, federal penalty for that is death.
Let me try the phones one more time. Chuck in Meridian?
Yeah, how you doing?
All right.
Yeah, you know, I'm a racist, I'm in the Klan, I'm a Nazi, all that kind of stuff, and whenever people say that people like myself are aligned with these militias, it's like an insult, because we wouldn't come out and let people know that we are armed and training ourselves, because they're going to be the first ones that Zog steps his foot down on, like at Ruby Ridge and at Waco. And I can understand where the sheriff's deputy is kind of concerned, too, because growing up as a youth, I was physically assaulted on 6 separate occasions by law enforcement officers. I had a friend who had his head blown off, refusing to pull over in a car at 17 years of age. Yeah.
Is there, I hear what you're saying, it's your question is, I don't hear your question
It's
as
just
much
like
as
a
a comment.
statement. I just want everybody to know these militias, like this guy, the racists, the racialists, the true racialists are not joining these organizations. So quit insulting both of us, because I'm sure it's an insult to Mr. Sherwood as it is an insult to people like myself saying that racists are in his group.
Okay.
Because for they may be some kind of people who may have like a dislike for
I'm gonna have to
Latino.
cut you. I'm going to have to cut you off, Chuck, because I'm not quite hearing your question. But we'll address that here with the sheriff.
What did he say? He was a racist?
He was saying he is a racist and he feels insulted to be included with the groups such as the militia because it sounds like they're not radical enough for him.
I'm insulted to even respond to him.
We'll move on to another call here. Gary from Twin Falls.
Yes. I've got a question for the militia man there.
Sure, go on.
What it amounts to is this. Would they be willing to take over the National Guard's responsibilities? I mean, they're willing to do it free, so why pay them?
Okay, thanks for your question. Would you like to be the National Guard, take the place of the National Guard? There's been some controversy between yourselves and the National Guard recently.
Well, I think under the construct of what we're trying to get back to on a national scale, that the National Guard has a lot of duties that are out of the state. We would not be interested in that. There are a lot of things that we could help the National Guard with within the state and help and augment them, especially if they are out of the state on duty in Nicaragua or Bosnia or wherever they may be taken.
Who would you be accountable to, though? Who's to say that you wouldn't end up being kind of a roving group of...
The state legislature and the governor. The governor is the commander-in-chief under the Constitution of the militia, and we would be, the State Defense Force is not just a gang of guys with guns out there roving around on their own. It is a constituted body of people under state law in the same way in which the state police is, and the same way in which the sheriff department is.
But you don't recognize, do you recognize the state police as an entity?
Certainly we recognize it as an entity and we honor it as a law enforcement body. We think that it's extraneous to the jurisdiction issue and that the jurisdiction issue should go back to the sheriffs and that they should be in charge of that.
But Sheriff Killeen, would you welcome that, or do you have any...
No, there again, I don't see what the militia is trying to fulfill. I don't see what place they have in our modern community. We have a National Guard, we have police, we have other kinds of organizations to take care of these things. When you espouse a particular, I go back over and over again, when you espouse a particular philosophical point of view, and that philosophical point of view tends to be negative towards the federal government, tends to question their authority in certain kinds of areas, that concerns me. Now, and also it would require...
Gee, Vaughn, 68% of the Republicans back east right now are questioning that very thing.
Well, you know, we're not talking about questioning the day in and day out type of policies. We're talking about questioning it to the point of waging war. Questioning policies, questioning the government, those kinds of things. That's the American right. We've been doing it for hundreds of years. But when I'm talking about waging war against the United States of America today, I'm opposed to that. I don't support it, and I don't support any group that even espouses that.
So am I, Vaughn.
Well, I'll tell you something. You better rewrite your book, Sam.
Well, find it in there that I espouse waging war. You've got it all marked there.
Some of the things.
Show me there. I mean, when you sheriffs had your meeting up there and you voted on whether you would support our idea or not, did you have a representative from any militia unit up there?
We had your book.
No, did you have a representative up there?
We had your Bible.
No, that isn't our Bible. That's a question and answer book that's out of date.
Everything about the militia, and right here, I can go through if you'd like and read the various things that we read that tends to upset us. It says right here, how can the militia do what the police cannot? It says the militia would have the appropriate arms and training similar to that of the military. Now, you just said a moment ago you wouldn't, but it says right here you would.
Yes,
okay, you talk about here.
And so you believe that the other state defense forces as held by the state of New Mexico, California, Oregon, New York, etc., are inappropriate and should be disbanded?
I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about my state of Idaho. I'm talking about the United States of Militia. You can go to those states and you can argue or support or defend what they're doing there. This is Idaho, where I live.
Okay.
Okay. It says right here that we do not want our police to be armed like the Army. I agree.
Okay.
Or act like one. I agree. It says they do not need attack helicopters, tanks, bulletproof vests, and etc. We, the citizens, must bear the burden of our own defense and share in the peaceful responsibility to protect and defend the communities and neighborhoods. But you talk about other kinds of arming in the same thing. We can go on here.
Back under state authority and state legislative authority, state defense forces, Title 32 U.S. Code.
We have a
Mr.
National
Sherwood?
Guard.
Well, that's a good opinion.
You're in your writings very supportive of local sheriffs. You're hearing one that is not particularly supportive of you. Does this change your mission? Would you, would you work to try and get Mr. Killeen out of office because of this?
Oh, certainly, certainly. Come next election, if Mr. Killeen continues to hold these ideas as a certain body politic is aroused to what our views are and to what his views are, we'll invite open debate between Mr. Killeen and ourselves and let the people choose. And if they decide that Mr. Killeen is not representing their views as the body politic of the people, then he'll be replaced. And that's the proper process.
Let's go to another phone call. Mike in Spokane.
Hello. Yeah, I'd like to ask the sheriff why law enforcement officers are not held accountable for the misuse of force, particularly maybe Ruby Ridge and Waco, and they're not brought into the courts, especially after the jury trial found both cases innocent. Why the misuse of force and the officers aren't brought to court and have a trial for them?
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, thanks for the comment. Number one, the jury acquitted them. There's a difference between acquittal and innocence. Number two is law enforcement officers are held accountable. You can't take two situations that are high-profile situations when you have literally millions of police activities occurring every year, and you can't take two situations and then make this blanket statement that law enforcement officers are not held responsible. I think that you're probably going to find before this is all done that you'll have a congressional inquiry. This is the American way again. There's been a lot of debate, a lot of people dissatisfied with the results. You even had recently a high-ranking FBI official who was dissatisfied with the results, and he went public here a few days ago. I think you're going to see those things come to the level of scrutiny that we gave to Randy Weaver in his trial. That's my own opinion. We have there was a very complex issue that happened out in Waco and what happened in Ruby Ridge. But what disturbs me more than anything are these people that feel that they have all of the insight and knowledge about what happened precisely and are already making judgments that the government was evil, bad, and did everything incorrectly and murdered people up there.
Okay, we should
As opposed to one thing, it wasn't until the rise of the militias, the independent militias in this country, that Congress finally got with it and called for this. Why didn't they call for it last year or 6 months ago or 18 months ago? It's because the outcry of the people was not sufficient to be heard, and now it is. And all of a sudden everybody says, well, let's wait until we get this.
There's no relationship between the militia and that. There was a lot of people that were upset. There was a lot of people, Senator Craig, a long time ago, was concerned about what happened here in Idaho, and he's been pushing buttons ever since.
Let's go to another phone call here. Steve in Cuna.
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm fine.
The fear and the hate from Mr. Killeen, it just really scares me. I mean, the way he wouldn't even respond to one of his citizens, that other caller. I mean, what is he afraid of? I mean, can you answer that, Mr. the Sheriff? What are you afraid of? What do you fear so much?
Okay.
If you could, well, is he hang
He's
up?
still on.
Okay, could you be more specific? I don't understand your question.
Well, it seems to me that you are so afraid of Mr. Sherwood and his organization that you're just up here like, this is your Bible. You hate the government. You hate this. What are you afraid that they're going to come and shoot you like that your people shoot everybody else in the street all the time? What are you afraid of, some of your own medicine, or what is it?
Well, the first thing I would suggest is kind of take a deep breath and count to 10.
Why is
Number two, I'm not afraid of anybody. There again, Mr. Sherwood is here explaining his views, and I'm here providing my opinion. I thought that's what this is all about. This is a public program. It's being broadcast around the state of Idaho, and it's an exchange of ideas and feelings and thoughts.
Yeah, well, why are you stuttering? I mean, you seem so tense and uptight. Look at,
Okay.
Look at Mr. Sherwood. He's so calm and cool.
Thanks very much, Steve. Obviously, a point of view from one person. I did want to ask you, Mr. Sherwood, in your attempt to help local law enforcement, should that ever happen, would you, for instance, if local law enforcement, if the sheriff called you and said, look, you know, there's some abortion protesters, there's some people that they're trying to get into a clinic, an abortion clinic, for their appointment, would you help the local sheriff for something like that, or well, just leave it at that.
Yeah, the use of the militia is very limited. The federal Constitution defines that the use of the militia should be constrained to insurrection, rebellion, or invasion. So it's not too likely.
But what about the DARE programs? You said you would help him in
Sure.
that instance.
At
That's not insurrection.
At the local level, I would like to see constructive things done. I think that a local abortion clinic that the local law enforcement can handle. If they couldn't, for instance, if it wasn't the abortion clinic, it was the Los Angeles riots, where the law enforcement cannot handle it. And instead of bringing in the National Guard or 4,500 U.S. Marshals or active Marines from Camp Pendleton, could they have called out the National Guard and the State Militia Reserve Forces, they nickname them Smurfs in California, could they have called out that group, and should they have served to protect their community? Yes, they should have, and that would have been appropriate.
And one more question. Are you in any way, while you're not advocating violence, are you in any way consulting people to do things behind the scenes, such as there's some word that perhaps liens are being put on judges' houses? Is that true?
Well, there's been some incidences that occurred up north, but
Yeah,
I don't know
not
if they're
from our
militia-based.
not from our organization. No, if I was doing something from behind the scenes, number one, I wouldn't tell you. But to answer the question honestly, no, we're not doing anything behind the scenes. We invite everybody to come to our meetings. We've invited the sheriff. We've invited every law enforcement agency, federal, state, and local. We invite the press to every meeting, including our own leadership meetings in my own home. My mayor and police chief and sheriff are openly invited to every meeting.
We have about 15 seconds each. Say one thing that you think hasn't been brought out in all the media attention about your organization.
Well, the United States Militia Association is dedicated to working within the laws as they currently exist to hold everybody accountable to those laws.
Is Sheriff Killeen the future of this situation?
Well, I guess that I would welcome any militia member if they wanted to become a reserve to apply in the normal process, and we could certainly use them, but I can't use the militia as an organized body because of the reasons stated before.
Okay. Thanks to both of you for joining us, and
Thank you
hopefully
very much.
this has
Thank you.
continued the debate, and thanks to you for tuning in. Please tune in again to another edition of Dialogue. Good night.
Dialogue is a production of Idaho Public Television and is funded by the Friends of Idaho Public Television and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
To purchase a videotape of this program, please contact Idaho Public Television at 1-800-543-6868.